Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to my channel here at Live Life in Maine. I think this is episode 49, maybe 50. I'm getting there. I got to ramp up these videos, but today we're going to talk about the housing crisis in Maine and why I don't think there is one. I'm going to go over some market stats for you, but I'm also going to talk to you about kind of 5 different options you can use to get into the Maine real estate market. Whether you're a first-time homeowner, you're looking to move and from another state and you're moving to Maine and you're looking for your first property in Maine, or whether you're downsizing or upsizing, there are a number of opportunities in order to buy real estate in Maine. You just got to understand the avenues that you can go to get them. How do you find them? Who to work with? And the process that it takes to get that done. So guys, if you're looking to move here, if you're an investor, if you're looking to upsize or downsize, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and watch this video because I think it's going to be informative, and we're going to get after that right now. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel here at Live Life in Maine. My name is Scott Tebow. If you haven't seen any of my videos, I'm a local Maine realtor. I was born and raised in Maine, grew up here, left right out of high school, joined the military, was gone for about a little less than 10 years, came back. I've been back ever since. I'm 57 years old. I'm a realtor. I'm a real estate consultant. I'm an investor. I do stuff that's a little creative financing, if you will. And apparently I'm becoming a video creator or content creator because this channel is growing, and I appreciate all of you who are watching this in the past or have subscribed. Thank you for being a subscriber of this channel, and I hope that I continue to add value to you. And as I've always said, you know, if you want to know anything or learn anything or want me to talk about anything, shoot me a text, send me an email, give me a call, and we'll see if we can include that into one of the episodes coming up. First and foremost, though, guys, I'm married. I am a father of 5 children, 4 girls and a boy, 3 grandchildren. I'm a patriot, I'm a veteran, and I'm a son of Maine, having been born and raised here. I'm a little bit older. I'm 57 years old, so I'm pretty well versed in the state of Maine. Like I said, I've lived here almost my entire life, other than almost 10 years. I was gone from 86 to 96, off into the military, and then I lived in the South briefly. Quick story about myself, not that that matters. Guys, I wanted nothing to do with this state of Maine when I was growing up. I thought it was too slow of a pace for me. I wanted to go off and see the world. I didn't know what I was going to do for a career. Probably one of the reasons why I joined the military out of high school, because I had no clue. And I did that, and I saw the world. I traveled in the military, mostly on their dime. And it kind of made me appreciate where I came from. So I've been all over this world, and I haven't been all over it, but I've been to a lot of places. Some of it was beautiful, no doubt about it. Palma, Spain, off the coast of Spain, a little island. Did some cliff diving there. I mean, this is when I was in my 20s, right, guys? Beautiful places. Australia, Perth, Australia, beautiful. French Riviera, beautiful. Where else? Like even parts of this country, some places in this country, right? When we were doing operations down in Florida, up by Jacksonville, or even where I was stationed down in Virginia Beach. Beautiful areas. But on the same hand, guys, there's some brutal places in this world, and I'm not going to get into some of those places. Africa is one of those examples, just brutal, and it really gave me the appreciation of where I came from. Really, as I started maturing and getting older, I realized, man, Maine's a pretty good place to live. New England in general is a pretty good place to to live, never mind the United States of America. So I was fortunate enough when I came back, started a family, started my career. I started in information technology first, and then I started getting into real estate a little bit, fixing and flipping while I still had a job. That has just morphed into growing and developing bigger properties. And I got my real estate license in 2013. I've been practicing real estate ever since, either as an investor, as a private money lender. I own some commercial properties. I own a business with my wife. Actually, we own a child care center. I call it her child care center. She kind of runs it. She's 51. I'm 49%. But I make sure it stays operational financially and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, she's doing a great job. And I have 4 companies myself, all related to real estate. So what I'm just trying to say to you is, this isn't my first rodeo, and there's a lot of qualified people out there, realtors out there. If you're looking around, I'm not saying there's some that know what they're doing, but there's definitely too many people in the game. And so you just got to understand who you're talking to, who you're dealing with, and do they have any history or experience, mostly in terms of what you're trying to get accomplished. And if they do, great. If they don't, I'm a resource for you. So let's talk about why Maine, in my opinion, does not have a housing crisis. So right now, I just pulled it off the multiple listing service. This doesn't count for sale by owners or anything. People that are pretty much either for sale by owners or, I don't know how it's real estate would be being sold, maybe by a corporation or a company or whatever. But for the most part, I pulled off the multiple listing services, 2,685 single family homes available throughout Maine as of today. If that doesn't count condos, that doesn't count trailers, that doesn't count anything along those lines. If you throw those numbers in there, it's 3,333 according to my notes right now. So people say there's a housing crisis. Well, let's break down that 2,685. Of the 2,685 homes, from $0 to $300,000, what they're asking for, what these homeowners are asking for, there's 875 of those homes available. From 301 to 500,000, there's 754 as you get closer to the coast. From 501,000 to 750, there's 481. And from 751 to 999,000 is 233, over 1,344. The average days on market right now is creeping up. It's, what do I got here? It's 41, where a year and a half ago, or even a year ago, it was like 12, right? So the market's somewhat slowing down. More houses are becoming available, and prices are coming down a little bit, or they're not coming down, but they're flattening, right? As the craziness of the boom of COVID and all the money that was given away is kind of starting to slow down, and people are coming back to reality, right? So I say that because of a couple reasons. There is property available, and I'm going to tell you why, a couple other reasons why there is. But I say that because Maine, I just found this out the other day, Maine was the sixth most moved to state in the country when you average per capita. So what does that mean? Essentially, if you take 100 people and they look at the inbound and outbound traffic, so for every 100 people that either came in the state or left the state, if you take 100, they said that 63 came in and 37 of them left. So people always focus on, well, why did 37 leave? Not that 63 came in. Why did 37 leave? They already go to the negative, right? 37 probably left mostly because they're older and they wanted to get out of the cold weather. They could have been relocated for a job, but they didn't just, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to say they didn't just leave because they hated Maine. It was probably either because they're snowbirds or they're going to live someplace warmer. They're older and they boomers or late Gen X's like myself that are retired and want to live in warmer places, or they may have been relocated for a job. So 63%, 63 came in, 37 left. made Maine number 6, most moved to state in the country per capita. And number 2, Maine's real estate values, home prices, have increased 78. This is crazy what I heard this. 74.5% since 2019, the fastest in the country, which bodes well for investors in the real estate market, doesn't bode as well for people that are trying to buy homes on the lower end, right? And the reason why that is, guys, is 2 things, I believe. Number 1, climate migration is a real thing. And what I thought it was going to be was climate migration going from the north to the south. But what has actually happened is people are coming north to get out of the hot weather. It's a lot hotter down in the south for longer periods of time than it is colder for shorter periods of time up here in the Northeast, number 1. But number 2, Maine is not a secret anymore, guys. It really isn't. All of us who've lived here our lives, or most of our lives, or have vacationed here or visited Maine, understand and know how much value, quality of life, just pace of life Maine offers. But before video, before the advent of the internet and social media, people didn't know that. So I used to ask people way back, 30-something, 40 years ago, hey, where's Maine? And most people were like, I don't know, it's by Pennsylvania. Isn't that by New York? Some people didn't even know there was a state called Maine. That's number 1. And number 2, I can remember when I was in IT, I was down in Boston and I met with a CIO for Harvard, for the Harvard University. And he found out I was from Maine and we're talking, it was Maine. I think of Maine like at least where my cabin is, where I'm going to go hunting. Do you guys even have electricity and running water yet? Now, this was 20 years ago, but the point I'm trying to make is people thought of Maine as kind of that last frontier, right? Nothing's going on. Who would want to live there? Kind of like Alaska, I guess I would think of today. Haven't never been there, right? I'm prejudging what Alaska would be like. But to my point, the secret's out, and a lot of people realize the value of Maine and why so many people are trying to move here. I'm working with 19 people myself just from this YouTube channel, and they're in all different aspects of moving here. Some are, have their houses for sale and are coming immediately. Some are just looking around. Some are just starting the process. Some are thinking about it in a couple of years. But in general, there's about 19 people that I'm working with. 4 or 5 of them are active right now, trying to find homes for them and looking for them to try to close in the next 30, 60, 90 days. So why doesn't Maine have a housing crisis? One of the reasons is there is property available. It's not as much as it used to be in the past. And I kind of did these numbers. In 2019, 18,423 houses sold, single-family homes sold. In 2020, 20,250. In 2021, 20,646. In 2022, that number jumped way down to 16,987. 2023 jumped down again, 13,794. And in 2024, it started coming up 14,453. What's interesting is if you look at how that correlates to interest rates, right? And the biggest flux of houses being sold, which was 2021 of 20,646, the average interest rate was 2.8%. That tells you right there, interest rates have a lot to do with it. That's number 1. When you look at the housing market, when it slowed down the most, which was 2 years later in 2023, 13,794, the average interest rate was 6.87. So it almost went up 3 times, right? People were like, what? I just came out of a 3% interest rate and now you're asking me to pay 7%? I'm not buying a house. Or people like, I got all this equity, but I'm not selling because what am I going to do with all this equity? I'm not going to sell if I'm in a 3 or 4% mortgage to get into a 7 or 8% mortgage. And in 2024, last year, the interest rates are even higher. The average interest rate in Maine or across this country, but in Maine in 2024 was 7.38%. However, about 900 more homes sold in 2024 than in 2023 as people started kind of figuring out how to figure out the interest rates. And I think what you're starting to see, a lot I started to see, is home buyers realized interest rate is just a temporary thing, right? Yeah, I might have to suck it up for 3 years or 4 years or 5, 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, but it's just temporary. I'll be able to refinance as when interest rates go back down. And I do believe you're going to see interest rates around 6% to the middle to the latter part of this year. They're already starting to come down a little bit. The new administration's already demanded to the feds, hey, we need to drop interest rates. Who knows what's going to happen? That's the whole political game that I try to stay neutral on, at least on my YouTube channel. But you're going to see interest rates come down. You're going to see more houses become available, and you're going to see more people moving here. So let's talk about 5 ways to buy a home in Maine. Obviously, a conventional way. Well, actually, I'm talking about 4 things that are causing people to come to Maine. Number 1, in terms of why Maine doesn't have a housing crisis, is lower population density. What does that mean? Maine is the least densely populated state in the country. I didn't know that actually either. In the whole country, I thought maybe Wyoming or Montana or South Dakota or North Dakota. No, it's Maine. Maine has more land available per person than any state in the country. That's number 1. Now, sure, you got the higher demand cities like Portland and Brunswick and Wells and Scarborough, those coastal communities that are in high demand, and they're going to have less inventory and the price is going to be higher. But when you get out of that, right, and here's the second thing, when you get out of that area, right, opportunities in smaller towns and suburban towns like Buxton, which is in southern Maine, Manchester, next to Augusta in central Maine, Durham, kind of in between central Maine and southern Maine, Waterboro, which is west here in York County, or Bangor, which is the 3rd largest metropolitan area in Maine, where the housing prices remain kind of around $300,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, right? Bangor, there's still plenty of opportunity to find a reasonably priced house if you don't have a home, if you're a first-time home buyer, or you can't really afford more than $300,000-$400,000 for a mortgage, right? For a house because of the mortgage. So opportunities in small towns and suburban areas like that is the number 2 reason why I don't think there's a housing crisis. Number 3, there is a lot of investment in workforce housing that's now starting to happen, right? The market kind of went up. People are building. They wanted market rates, and those houses are selling. But now what you're seeing is Maine, as a state, has said, we need to emphasize on workforce housing as well. And I'm going to give an example. There's workforce housing happening all over this state. Biddeford, where I live, Wells, Bangor, Rockland, Ellsworth, Brunswick. There's all kinds of workforce housing. What is workforce housing? So typically, workforce housing is developers build properties. They're generally apartments, and you can only live in them if you qualify under the workforce housing financial salary guidelines. So what is that? Well, the guidelines are based upon the area's median income. We call it AMI. And that number can be between 60% and actually up to 120% of the area's median income. So as an example, in Biddeford, the area's median income is $61,000. I don't know how people, especially if you have a family of 4, could survive on $61,000. But just saying, it's $61,000. So that means if you look at $61,000 and you go between 60% and 120%, if you make between $38,000 a year and $75,000 a year, you qualify for workforce housing, which means you're going to have lower rents. You're going to have nice properties. They're just being built, but your rents are going to be not market rents, workforce housing rents, which is going to be 20, 30, sometimes 50% lower than the market rates. Okay. That's number 3, workforce housing. If you're looking to move here to get started and then maybe move into a house or something down the road. Number 4, there's a bunch of programs for first-time home buyers, right? And maybe this is across the states. You got first home loans, which will give you up to $5,000. You'll have lower interest rates. It'll help you with some of your closing costs. You got purchase plus improvements. So you find a property, but it won't assess or won't appraise because it needs work. Well, you could potentially through a purchase plus improvement, finance up to $35,000 of improvements in that house in a low interest rate along with your mortgage and get that house up to speed to be able to appraise it and move in, right? You have what we call the salute to Maine. These are veterans, active duty, or retired people that can qualify for lower interest rates. And I'm not talking about the VA at all. I'm just talking about that's just another program that's available, right? And then, of course, you have traditional government like USDA, 0% down. You have to be in a USDA district and work with a broker or me, realtor or broker like me. If you don't work well and understand what some of those districts are, Biddeford actually is one of them. FHA, USDA, like I just said, FHA, VA, right? All those housing lenders, right, are trying to get more people into housing and with lower interest rates and some help getting in. That's 4 reasons, just off the top of my head, why people, how you can move to Maine and why there isn't a housing crisis. The 5th reason I'm going to get into a little bit more, and that's called creative finance. And this is where you really got to think outside the box, right? I do this a lot, either seller financing, subject to properties, or work with local investors. So I'm going to give you an example to help you understand this, to give you just to plant a seed in your head how this could work for you, right? I'm not saying this is your cup of tea, it may be, but let's just look at creative financing, right? So right now, as of January, what's today, the 27th, on Monday morning, I have some property on the market that I'm listing, right? One is a 4-unit multi-unit in Biddeford, okay? The asking price is $850,000. So right then and there, most people are like, $850,000. I can't afford $850,000, and they shut their mind off and they're done. I can never afford $850,000, so they're done. And I'm not, they don't see a way. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk to you right now, and I'll flash up on your screen how you can live in an $850,000 4-unit that you're the owner of, play the equity game, for $709 a month, which is cheaper than anything that's in Biddeford for rents. Never mind a 4-unit, multi-unit, a three bedroom, 1 bath. So let's break down the numbers, right? So this 4-unit has 4 3x1 units, right? Well, you're going to live in one of them, so now there's only 3 that are going to pay rent. The average rent in Biddeford for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house or apartment is $2,500 a month. And typically what you have is you generally have 2 or 3 people living in that 3-unit to help offset the $2,500 a month rent, okay? So you got 3 units, $2,500 a month. That's $7,500 a month and rental income you have coming in because you're living in the 4th unit. Now, if you weren't living in the 4th unit and you were just an investor, well, now you got $10,000 a month in rent coming in. But we're just going to say you're going to live there. You're going to be owner occupied, which will help you qualify for an FHA loan. You're going to live in 1 unit and you're going to have the other 3 rented. And these units are fully rented, by the way. So you live in this unit, and to qualify for an FHA loan, you need 3.5% down. We'll get to the 3.5% in a minute, right? So let's just say you have 3.5% down. It's an FHA loan, and you want to buy this $850,000 4-unit apartment building in Biddeford, right? So first of all, you're going to take 3.5% off the $850 because that's your down payment. So you're gonna try to qualify, I think, for something like, I don't know off the top of my head, I think it's $826,000 some odd dollars, right? Because you're putting 3.5% down. We'll get to the 3.5% in a minute. So right now, an FHA loan, the APR is like 5.9 something percent for a first-time homeowner that can buy a multi-unit, right? So if you take the average APR and you multiply that by 826,000, whatever that is, you do an amortization, it bakes out that your principal and interest is $4,881 a month. Now, you're going to say to yourself, I can't afford a $4,881 a month mortgage. Yeah, you're thinking about it all wrong. It doesn't matter what the mortgage is. It matters how you pay for the mortgage, right? So, and then the second question is going to be, I can't qualify for a $4,881 mortgage because I don't make enough. Well, that's not true, guys. This is where if you don't understand some of these programs or creative financing, then you're right, you won't, because you don't know, and it's impossible to know what you do not know. So maybe this is going to help you a little bit. So FHA, number one, for a 4-unit in York County, which is where this 4-unit is, in Biddeford, Maine, will allow financing up to $1,154,450, right? That you can't try to buy a 4-unit using FHA for more than that, or they won't let you qualify. So, number one, we meet the criteria: 850 versus 1.1 million. That's number one. Number two, they will allow up to 75% of the rental income to be added to your income to qualify. So what's 75% of $7,500? That's $5,625. The mortgage on an FHA loan to buy an $826,000, we still remember, we got to figure out how we're going to put down the deposit of, 8 times 3, 24, 25,000, whatever that is, 27,000, whatever that is $4,881, right? Well, right there, if you add the income onto 75% of the income, which you're going to be getting from the tenants because it's already leased, it's already rented, is $5,625. So right now you're making more money. You qualify. I'm not saying making more because you still have expenses. Right there, you qualify based upon the rental income. Even if you didn't make $1, you'd still qualify. Now, of course, if you didn't make $1, you'd probably have some FICO issues and some credit issues. I'm just being facetious, but I'm just giving you an idea of an example. And I'm going to flash this up on the screen so you see the numbers, right? So what we do is we say, what's the delta? What's the difference between $4,881 and $5,625? Let's see, that's 16, 17, what's that? Off the top of your head, between $7,500 and $4,881, excuse me, not the 5,625, back up. So 48, 58, 68, 2,000, let's call it $2,712, maybe $2,600, right? That's the delta between the rental income you got coming in and your mortgage payment of $4,881. Now that delta of $2,600 plus dollars also has to cover some expenses, right? So, but before we get to that, how you going to get to $24,000, $25,000, $26,000 that you're going to need for the down payment, never mind closing costs? So estimated, you're going to need about 50 grand, I'm going to say, between your down payment and closing costs, maybe a little bit less, but I'm just going to balance that out, 50 grand. You're going to need about 50 grand to get into this multi-unit, to live in one of the 3x1 units and have the other 3 rented. Where's that 50 grand coming? You don't have 50 grand. You might have 2 grand. I don't know. You don't have 50 grand. Where are you going to get that 50 grand? This is where you get into creative financing, and I get involved, or other people like me get involved, right? We have private money lenders. So let me just give you an example. You need 50 grand to cover your closing costs, your down payment, and maybe a little bit extra for something. I don't know. I didn't do all the math. I just bet roughly 50 grand. I think it's going to be a little bit less, really, in closing costs. You're probably going to need 20, 38, 40 grand. But I said 50, right? So you find a private money lender. There's all kinds of private money lenders all over the place, guys. And I can put you in touch with the one if this is something you want to go down. If the property's still on the market, which it probably won't be by the time you watch this video. But I'm just giving you some examples, right? So 50 grand. Where am I going to get 50 grand from? I don't have 50 grand. Go to a private money lender. How do you find a private money lender? You talk to people like me and others have connections, right? So let me give an example. I'm a private money lender, and I'm going to give you 50 grand to cover your down payment, your closing costs, and you might have some money left over for furniture or whatever you want to do, right? So there's 50 grand. I'm going to want 12% interest. and I'm going to want you to pay it off in 3 years, right? So 12% interest on a 50 grand loan in 3 years means I'm going to get my 50 grand back, plus I'm going to make 10 grand. So I'm going to make 60 grand total, 50, then I'm going to get back and 10 back. So I'm making 10, but I'm at the end of the year, 3 years, my 50 grand made me 10 grand, right? Or 25, if you do that, 20% is really what it ends up being, right? If you really think about it, right? 20% of the money I lended, I got back. I double more than you're going to get in the market, but that's at a 12% annual interest rate over 3 years. And let's say it takes you 3 years to pay it off, right? So that monthly payment to me is going to be $1,660.72 or $1,661. So let's add that. And that's another expense you're going to have on top of your mortgage of $4,881, right? And then you're going to have monthly expenses. The monthly expenses on this the annual expenses on this property is about 20 grand. So what do those annual expenses include? They include heat, first and foremost. They include property taxes. They include water, they include sewer, and they include repairs, maintenance, and property management. Now, you can kind of get rid of the property management because you're going to live there, so you're going to mow the lawn, you're going to make sure the yard's snow plowed if there's snow. You're going to do some of the minor stuff. If you have to bring somebody in that's bigger or you need more skill, then you'll hire that. But it's already included in it, so right now, that numbers, I have all the income expenses on this property as an example, is just under $20,000 a year. So I use the number of 20. Well, that $20,000 a year is going to cost you, if you divide that by 12, is going to cost you $1,666.66 per month. So I'm just going to say $1,667. So you got a mortgage of $4,881. You got a loan that you got to pay back to a private money lender of $1,661, and you have taxes, insurance, all the expenses of this 4-unit of $1,667 a month. So if you add all that up, that equals $8,209. But you got $7,500 coming in rent. What's the difference between $8,209 and $7,500? $709, guys. That's how it works. This is just quick. I'm not getting into the details. I'm sure you have a ton of questions. I'm just showing you the numbers work, and how all that works is a different discussion, but the numbers work. So where else in the world can you live in a growing area on the coast in Maine in a 3-unit, 1-bath for $709 when the rents for that 3-unit, 1-bath is $2,500? And not only that, your property is appraising in value, right? You're not paying somebody else's mortgage payment so they can play that game in equity. You're paying yourself. Maybe you live in this property. FHA says, I think you have to live in there 2 years. Maybe you're a landlord and you live in it for 5 years, right? And in 5 years, that property is now worth, let's just say, $900,000 or $1 million. You played the equity game and now you're off and running. That's an example of creative financing, guys. That's an example of somebody who wants to think outside the box a little bit, who wants to move to Maine or already is here and is looking at ways to get their money working for them. There's a number of ways, guys, to buy and sell real estate in this state. Traditionally, right? Go out and get a loan, pay the bank. 30 years, you're generally paying 3 times the amount for that house if you ran it for 30 years. But the other thing that people don't take into account when they own the property is, let's use this as an example. The IRS, I believe, and I'm not a certified public accountant, talk to them, but the IRS says you can accelerate. Essentially, they say this. Over the course, I think it's 27 and a half years, you can write off essentially what you bought the property for in well, they'll give you up to that amount to write off over 27 and a half years. Essentially, they're saying it's like this, guys. They simply say, if you buy a $500,000 property, you're going to have to put $500,000 into it in 27 and a half years, roughly, to maintain that $500,000 value. So they allow you to write that off on depreciation on your property. Now, what they do is they allow you to take, I believe it's up to 7 years up front. So what's $850,000 times 7, right? What's that? 56, 57, 58. You could take 60 grand off your taxes, right? And then in year 8, you could do the same thing, right? Just got to be careful, deal with an accountant, because if you sell during that time that you took that depreciation, you're going to have to pay that money back, or there's some number, but it's not my rule. This is the IRS rule. These are just some things you guys got to understand. Again, talk to an accountant. But there are so many advantages to owning your own property, whether it's in Maine or any other state in this country. The advantages of Maine is quality of life. We're still one of the most economical and the least expensive to live in New England. More people are moving here because of climate migration, because of quality of life. The secret's out. Add to the point that, you can work pretty much anywhere now. And I had a couple of videos about this where, the remote worker, and they're out there. There's a lot of them out there, right? If you don't work for the feds or the government, because they're all getting called back. But there's a lot of companies like, hey, I don't need bricks and mortar anymore. I can have a remote office, right? What they find out is people who work remotely can be more productive. They're not working as much, but there's this whole study on critical thinking and how most people who have jobs, right, they get more achieved in 3 hours, the first 3 hours, if that's just what they focus on, than they will in 8, because by lunchtime rolls around, they're sitting at water coolers, they're talking to their buddies, they're not really doing as much work, even though they're getting paid for 8. So there's some companies that are saying, our work week's only going to be 25 hours. However, those 25 hours, there is no cooler talk. You're going to be working steadily for 4 hours a day, or whatever, 4 times 5 or 6, whatever it is, right? 20 hours. You're going to be working steadily because that's when you're the most critical thinking. That's when you have the most processing. And after that, your brain kind of starts getting tired or worn out, and you start to chitter-chatter and all that. So for that period of time is when you're going to make the most effort for the company that you're working for. And there are companies that are figuring out, yeah, this is the way to go because you're balancing quality of life. Never mind working from home, right? So Maine's not a secret anymore, guys. There's ways to get into the market. You got to work with somebody who's creative. You got to work with somebody who's hungry and aggressive, and you got to, maybe you have to think outside the box if you're going to get into one of these multi-units where you're going to own your own property. If you're not, and you're just going to buy a house and you're going to play the appreciation game and then play the mortgage or whatever, then that works too. I'm just trying to tell you guys, there's so many ways to do it. You just got to be bold, search for information, and understand the longer you wait, the longer it takes you to get in the game, the farther behind you're going to fall. And we know there's a difference between the rich and the poor, and that gap is spreading more and more and more and more. So we live in the most wealthiest country in the world. Do you realize, in closing, I'm going to say this, do you realize that I think poverty, the lowest levels of poverty in this country is like if you make $14,850 a year, you are at the lowest poverty levels. I mean, between food stamps, unemployment, all these services, you're going to make about $14,850, right? And people like me and others like, man, I just don't know how much somebody can survive, right? However, do you know what the lowest poverty level in the country, in the world is? It's $750 a year. Remember some of those countries I said I went to was brutal? Well, I've been to some of those countries where people are carrying water on their heads, and people are worrying about where the next meal is coming from. And people are worrying about getting attacked by the local wildlife or the tribes or the warlords or any of that, right? So $14,850 puts you in the top 1% of wealthiest people in the world, but puts you in the lowest percentage of wealthiest people in this country. That's the paradox, guys. There are so many ways to make money. There's so many opportunities out there, whether it's real estate or something else, to make a good living in this world. And stop comparing yourself to the billionaires. You got to compare yourself to you. So, all right, guys, I'm off my soapbox. I hope this video was helpful. Drop me a line, send me a comment, subscribe to this channel, help me know that you're interested in what I'm producing for content. And like I said, if you want to know more information about something real estate related, creative financing related, investing related, buying or selling related, shoot me a line, drop me a text, give me a call, and I will answer your question. I'll throw up on a video. We'll do a Zoom call, email call, whatever you want to do, right? I'm here as a resource. My mantra is, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And people don't care how much you know until they care how much. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's how I live. You give back 10. I believe in giving back 10 times the amount that I give. What does that mean? For every $100 I give out, I get back $10, right? And so that creates enormous amounts of wealth, because am I physically giving away $100? No, but I'm giving away $100 in time. And that time is coming back to me tenfold, and that time comes back to me in a number of ways, more time and money, right? And quality of life and inspiration and feeling good and a purpose. And so that's my life, guys. That's how I live, and I hope all of you try to as well. All right, guys, stay warm out there. It's the middle of winter up here in Maine. We got like 4 or 5 inches of snow down here in southern Maine. High temperatures, I think 20 today. They've been in the low teens. I got a cool little heated jacket, so I love it. And I actually love the cold. I love taking my dog for a walk, who's right over there. And you might have heard her a couple times going, because she just wants to get out. But stay safe. Have a great day, guys. Have a great week. Again, drop me a line, send me a call, send me a email. Subscribe to this channel if you want more information like this moving forward, and we'll talk to you soon. Scott Tebow, over and out. Bye-bye.